Howdy everybody, I'm Levi Noguess. I'm standing out here with my Fieseler Storch replica of a STOL airplane. It's a replica of a German Fieseler Storch, which is a FI-156. This is called a Slepchev Storch, and it was made and manufactured by a guy named Nestor Slepchev. He came up with this idea. He really loved these Storches, or stork as the English word, he decided to build a replica of it. So it's about a 3/4 scale replica, and believe it or not, it's pretty close to, it looks very good. It looks the part. It's not exactly the same airplane, but it very much looks the same. And performance-wise, it's almost the same as the original aircraft, except for the fact that it's a lot lighter. But it does, the numbers, the speeds, and all that stuff are very similar. It's about 780 pounds, where the original one, empty weight, was about 1,300 pounds, I believe. And the max gross on the original is about 2,900 pounds. This one's 1,320, so it's a light sport airplane. However, we've only got a 100 horsepower engine on it. The original, believe it or not, had a 240 horsepower inverted V8, 8-cylinder engine. So it was upside down V8 for 240 horsepower. A little bit of history on this type of plane is, back in World War II, the U.S. Army and the military was using a J3 Cub. Off-the-shelf J3 Cub they took and modified and called it an L4, and it was used on the battlefield for liaison and spotting and stuff like that. And the commanders would fly over the battlefield and look around, and then they would also use it later on for artillery calling and fire and stuff like that, and have aerial spotters. This was the German answer to that. But the Germans, unlike the Americans, we took an off-the-shelf Piper Cub and converted it to a military use. The Germans decided they wanted an airplane that would do that, and they just went to the drawing board and said, we want an airplane that'll do X, Y, Z, and land short, take off short, carry some people, and this is what they came up with. So the German engineering at the time was pretty awesome, and they really focused on the specs on this, so they got exactly what they wanted. This airplane was famous for the rescue of Benito Mussolini when he was held prisoner in a mountaintop hotel. They captured him and held him in a mountaintop hotel, and Hitler ordered a rescue attempt to get him out of there. And what they did was they wound up sending a bunch of special forces type folks in there. They had gliders that they towed in and dropped them in, and then they had this airplane that pulled in, landed on the side of this mountain in a very small area, and then took off with Mussolini. There was one German general that was there with him, and he's like, I'm not going to leave. I think actually a colonel. And he got Mussolini in the plane, and then he refused to leave himself on the ground. So they put 3 people in this plane. And it was a very dangerous airport, or a very dangerous takeoff, and they almost didn't make it. So it's pretty famous for the Storch. But this airplane, you couldn't put 3 people in even if you tried. The other airplane, of course, was a lot bigger. This one's got a 32-foot wingspan. The original has about a 46-foot wingspan. So it stands a lot taller. It's pretty impressive. This airplane, for a small light sport airplane, is pretty tall too, as you can see. And the landing gear on this thing is one of the most amazing things. The landing gear, as you see right now, in the fully compressed state of just sitting here, it's still got about 8 to 10 inches of travel. But when I lift off, the gear extends another almost 12 inches. And I can demonstrate that by just lifting up on this wing here, and you can see how much travel there is still in that strut. So it really absorbs the impact. You can land this thing down and put it down pretty hard. The original had oleo struts. This one's got bungees. So it would be a little better with oleo struts. You know, you'd have a shock effect. The bungees are a little bit spongy, but other than that, that's pretty cool. Down at the bottom here, it looks like a bomb. That's intentional to look like a bomb. I'm going to put some fins on it to make it look more the part, but it's really just a fuel tank. It's an aux tank. On this airplane, I've got 8.5 gallons in each wing, so it's not really a large tank in the wing. So I've got 17 gallons of normal fuel. I got 10 gallons down here for aux fuel. And all that does is it just transfers into the main tanks. Once I burn out for the main tanks, I just hit a switch and it transfers into the main tanks. Powered by a Rotax 912 ULS 100 horsepower engine. The original was a 240 horsepower, but with 100 horsepower on the light airplane, its empty weight is 780 pounds, and it works pretty good. It takes off Yesterday I was consistently taking off in about 100-ish to 125 feet. With a little wind, you can take off a lot shorter. This airplane benefits greatly from a headwind. Every airplane does, but this one, it takes, when you get if I got a 15-mile-an-hour wind, I can take off in about 30 feet. So otherwise, it's, 100-foot range. So it changes a lot with a little wind. The other thing that's unique about this is the way that the landing gear struts. It's kind of like the Just Aircraft Super STOL. You got the external bracing in the strut, and that's one of the reasons that you can swing this gear so far. It swings, like I said, about 12 inches. Once I take off, you'll see it. It looks like they're hanging way down, and as you've seen, it looks pretty good. The other thing is it's got fixed leading edge slots, and this is one of the things that really adds to the STOL characteristics of it. You can get a high angle of attack, and that keeps the boundary layer from separating, and it really increases your ability to go slow. So when I come in for a landing, I'm coming in at 35 miles an hour or so indicated. I don't know what that really is, but I've got a pretty high deck angle. And now I hear a Huey coming by. I love the Huey. I flew a Huey in the Army, so that's pretty cool that we've got one coming by now. Well, the Huey's turning around going away, but the Huey is one of those sounds that's just really cool, and being that I'm a former Huey pilot, I always love to hear them and see them, and I just talked to the pilots earlier and they were awesome. So we've got the guy that built it was a friend of mine. It's built from a kit, like I said, Nestor Slepchev. When he built the kit, he researched the paint scheme, and so he wanted to have an authentic paint scheme. And when he did that, he put these markings on here. Now, this little piece of tape right here, I shouldn't have that there. That was a small, when you have this symbol here, this means adjutant. If you have a triangle in here, a small triangle, that means commander. So I would just put that on there as a little joke about being the commander. But he liked the skull and crossbones, so I have a print shop, so I printed that for him and put it on here. The other thing that's on here that I know sometimes isn't politically correct is the swastika, but in the essence of authentication and being authentic, it's on there. It's not representative of any views or anything like that. It's just a tribute to the aircraft itself. This is how they were in the German use. So around here you'll notice that the elevator is pretty big. It's also got a long fulcrum from the mains to the tail. When it's sitting on the ground, this tail is very heavy. When you're in the air though, it's very well balanced. But when you're sitting on the ground, the tail weighs about 90 pounds. And the airplane only weighs, just almost 800 pounds. So it's got quite a heavy tail. So the good thing about that is you don't have to worry about nosing it over by hitting the brakes too hard. The bad thing about this airplane is the brakes aren't good enough to nose it over. So I guess that's good too. So I'm not going to hurt myself. Typical tail wheel configuration. This one is not exactly authentic, but this is a maul tail wheel. The original airplane had a tail wheel that stuck out of the bottom of the fuselage in the back. Very interesting design. It was on an oleo strut, and it was pretty good. You can see up here the fuel tanks are on the top. It's a little bit of a trick to get to the fuel tanks because you have to step up on there, and I can actually demonstrate that if you want. The way to get up to the top to check the oil or the fuel is kind of a maneuver to step up here and get to it. So it's not hard, but it definitely takes some gymnastics. The flaps, it's got about 40 degrees of flaps, which are plenty. And you got 3 notches of flaps. When you come in, you'll see the flaps come down pretty far. And it just slows it down. It doesn't really give it a lot more lift, but it definitely slows it down. Inside, Bob did a really good job of making it look authentically military. I'll walk to the other side. You can see through there. But he put a lot of parts. He was able to get some military surplus switches and stuff. So, and he's got some military seat belts and harnesses. And then with the exception of the little GRT EFA screen up there, some of those gauges actually are military surplus that he was able to get. So it's pretty cool. It's very rudimentary, but it looks kind of military, and I really enjoy it. It's a tight fit to get in. It's a little bit awkward to get in, but once you get in, it's very comfortable, and it's you know, military type quadrant. Everything. The stick is if you notice the stick, it's got a good hook in it there. He had to add a little bit of he reworked that a little bit to make it more comfortable to fly. And actually in the back seat, you can, my wife actually rides back here and she enjoys it with the windows open. You can fly with the doors open, or you can take them off. It's a little breezy in the back, but on a hot day, that's welcome. So, and the luggage compartment, which on the other side I forgot to show you, it's not very big, but I can get my backpack and a sleeping bag and a little tent in there. And that's what I came up here with, so, you know, it's all set up for camping. The original one, if you look at the overhead here, the original airplane had a glass all the way to the back. Bob, when he built it, did not want that because of the sun. So he just put this aluminum up here, and it actually makes it nice. Now, another thing on the original one, they had a configuration where they put the seat, turn the seat backwards, and they had a machine gun mounted on this back glass. And a gunner would sit in the back and was able to, you know, if somebody was coming at him, they could shoot toward the back. It was kind of like the, you know, tail gunner deal. It was I don't know what caliber machine gun it was, but I don't have one. I've been thinking about taking a toilet plunger and sticking on that back window, painting it black, just so I got a machine gun sticking out the back. I think that'd be kind of funny. So I just didn't get around to doing that. I've only had the airplane about a month, and so I'm still kind of learning how to really land it short, but it's a lot of fun. And I'm up here at the STOL competition, and it's been a blast. Everybody loves the plane. It draws a lot of attention, and I'll tell you what, it may not be the best at anything, but it's pretty awesome at everything. And I love the heck out of it. So what we've got here, we have this is the flap handle. The flap handle has got notches in it, and you pull it down. Now, one thing to note about this that's very nice and very interesting is that all the controls are push-pull tubes. There are not cables and pulleys like a lot of airplanes, especially on light sport. So this, you can see right here, when I move the flaps, there's the tube that actually activates the flaps. For obvious reasons, we got it labeled well so somebody doesn't grab it and pull on it. And then for the ailerons, you got the same thing. So you got the push tube here and the ailerons right there. And the elevator is actually underneath, you can't see that, but it's underneath the floorboard. And then, so you got the fuel valves. I got a fuel valve on this side, and then just like it on the other side, you see the fuel gauge right here. I'm about half a tank on the right, and it's probably empty over here. I can't tell, but it's got half a tank of fuel on the right, so obviously I'm not, I don't want to have a lot of fuel for the competition. And then typical Rotax, one of these fuel lines goes back in there and it refeeds. You know, the fuel Rotax has a fuel line going to the engine and then a return line for the fuel that doesn't get used, goes back into the tank. Then when you come back around here, you can kind of see the pitot tube and stuff like that for the airspeed indicator. It's also got air vents up here, which help a lot. It's got your switches, you got your lights, avionics, and it's actually a dimmer switch for interior lighting. It's actually set up, you can fly it at night. It's got all the lights, landing lights, nav lights, strobe lights, everything. And then this GRT is, you know, it's got attitude indicator, airspeed, everything in there. And then, let's see, that's about it there. ELT, for dummies like me, got all the V speeds here, so I don't get completely lost. You can see VS, their stall speed is posted at 29. That's pretty darn slow. And you can actually fly it down even lower than that if you add a lot of power. You know, you can fly it down to almost 0 indicated. You're not really at 0, but you know, when you got so much power, and then it's really kind of actually hard to do that without climbing. But so I can go down really, really slow, below 29, and the GRT cuts out at about 30. And then I've got this extra one here, is another airspeed indicator. It's digital, it goes down to 0. So that one helps me when I get below 30, because this one cuts off. It gives me red dashes. And I got the old military 8-day clock that I can reset, you know, non-digital backup, it's good. As you'll notice, if you're looking at the Hobbs there, it's only got 450 hours on it since he built it, so it's a pretty young engine. The engine, airframe, everything's got 454 hours there. Then you can see this light here. This is one of the old lights. I think he got that from an Apache helicopter or something. And then down here I was talking about the Aux Fuel. This is how I get the fuel from the aux tank up into the main tanks. You turn the Aux Fuel on and then turn the pump on. It takes the fuel out of the bomb and puts it up in the wing. It actually puts it in the right wing, but then it does cross level after a while. So I've got plenty of fuel switches. Got a main fuel, I got a fuel switch on each tank so I can bleed out of both tanks or out of one tank, which makes it handy for balance and that kind of thing. As long as you keep it in trim, it stays pretty even if you get burning off both tanks. Then you notice, he left this in here for me, but the old E6B, most people don't use that too often anymore. That's the real calculator, a real flight computer they used to call it. Nowadays you call that a computer, people look at you funny because it's nothing electronic about it, but I keep it in here just in case. You know, you can always do your whiz wheel and check your fuel burn and that kind of thing. It does have a good fuel burn indicator here with the fuel. It tells me how much fuel I got and counts it down, and that's very accurate. You know, the gauges are pretty accurate too, but they bounce around because they're original float type gauges. So if you're in bumps or anything, they're bouncing all over the place. But that thing is pretty much right on. It's got a good calibration, and every time I fill up, it's exactly accurate. So if that tells me I got 10 gallons of fuel left, I'm pretty sure that's what I got. But I always err on the side of caution anyway and give myself a little extra, you know. You don't want to run out of gas, that's embarrassing. Well, that was a good walk-around video of the Fieseler Storch Replica, Nestor Slepchev Storch. I hope you enjoyed it, and thanks for watching. Okay, one of the things that's really cool about this airplane is that the kit, when my buddy Bob ordered this kit back in 2007, because he was just really engrossed and enamored by this Fieseler Storch, he actually almost considered buying a real one. But then he wound up finding this kit, and Nestor Slepchev, the guy that originated the kit and built it, from selling them out of Australia, he mailed or shipped the kit over to Bob, and at the same time he shipped another airplane that was a LSA. It was already built, but it was just you know, the wings were taken off and it was crated up for shipping. Then he got the airplane there. This one came and the other one came to Bob at the airport in Killeen, and Nestor Slepchev showed up with the other kit. I helped him put the wings on, and Bob, you know, was there and taking this airplane. I had a little sign shop at the time, different than the one I've got now, but so I made letters for the airplane that Nestor brought in after he got it put together, and he delivered that airplane, and that airplane went to Kirby Chambliss, who's a Red Bull air race pilot, and also I believe Southwest Airlines pilot. And so that airplane went to Kirby Chambliss, so the sister to this one. And when Nestor delivered it, we put it together, and then he gave me a ride in that airplane. So I've flown in Kirby's airplane before he did, and I flew in this Storch with the designer and builder of the original, the kit manufacturer. So I thought that was pretty cool, that I then wound up buying this airplane after Bob built it. So it's been a kind of a circuitous story, but it was pretty neat. I actually contacted Kirby on Facebook and asked him if he still had it, and he does still have the Storch. I told him one of these days we need to get together and fly them together. That'd be pretty cool. So who knows, maybe that'll be in the works one of these days. They tell you to watch the guys bouncing the basketball and count how many times they do this passes, right? And you do it and you go, okay, there's 13. Then they ask you, okay, now how many of you noticed the gorilla? And you're thinking, what gorilla? Then they show you the same thing again. Now watch for the gorilla. So they're bouncing this basketball around, and this gorilla just walks into the screen and just does this. You know, it's a guy in a gorilla suit, and you don't see it. But you see it when you look at it again, you go, how did I miss that? But because you're so focused on the basketball that you don't see the gorilla. Yeah. And so, you recording me? Yep. So, I was trying to be coy about it. Okay. So, well, that's a good lesson, though. It's a good lesson in sometimes you get so, that's what happened, you know, tunnel vision or something, yeah. Even when you're flying, you know. So you're watching, like for this, you're watching the start line or the line you're supposed to land on. Next thing you know, you forget about your airspeed. And that's how people wind up crashing, or you're focused on stopping so hard, you go over, you know. So but that is an experiment in psychology, how you can miss things because you're focusing on one thing and you don't see the stuff around you. But anyway, that's not what we were here to record. That was funny.